The Garden Report is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey, Buddy Manning here. Welcome to an off-day Garden Report, Sunday afternoon here in Cleveland. We're, of course, checking out the West End with Tim Bontemps, ESPN.
How we doing?
Welcome in.
Not bad, not bad.
Interesting series so far, Tim. The Cavs. I know where Tim's going with that.
More interesting than it probably should have been.
Right.
Put it that way.
We'll put it that way. What's been your overall thoughts on the series so far? Celtics obviously got right last night, locked in defensively, got a better Tatum game. You know, I still think there's some room for improvement that we're going to get into here from him.
Oh, yeah, we're getting
But they took care of business effectively last night is how you look at it.
Yeah, I thought they came out with the requisite level of force and intensity from the beginning. Games 1 and 2, they were sort of on autopilot, like we've seen from them a lot in the past at home. But I thought they came out really determined last night to make sure they got off to a good start, which they did. Had a really good start to the third quarter, and then, maybe turned off a little bit after that. But overall, really good defensive performance. Did a good job limiting everybody but Donovan Mitchell in the game for the Cavs, and I thought did what they needed to do to take back control of the series, and we'll see if they can do the same thing tomorrow.
What do you make of Tatum's performance so far? It's the biggest conversation around this team, this series in particular. The shooting's not great. Celtics, obviously, their big thing is he's doing all the other stuff. He's playing the right way. Does he need to shoot better? Does he need to score more for them? Or is this something where he can be that diversion, he can do all these other things, and since there's so much talent around him, they can win in spite of that?
I mean, I think to get where they ultimately want to go, he's going to have to score the ball better than he has been. Last night, he took a lot of shots in isolation that weren't very good. I didn't think he particularly played that great again. You look at what Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday did. I think they were a lot more determining factors in why the Celtics won the game, despite the fact that Tatum had a really good line. They played fine. But yeah, look, I think they're going to need him to shoot better ultimately. But he still does a lot of other stuff to help him win. I thought last night, games 1 and 2, I thought his defense in particular was pretty poor. Thought he was much better at that end last night. And overall, if he plays the way he did yesterday going forward, I think the Celtics will be fine against most teams.
What do you think, Josue?
What do you think about the criticism, though? Like, heading into Game 3, I understand the criticism because of Game 2's performance out of Jayson, and just overall, I mean, he hasn't been shooting great, but I just didn't think it was warranted in the sense of, oh, you have to shoot close to 50% because you're Jayson Tatum, or you have to be putting up 30+. I mean, when you look at this team and this roster, I just felt like that's where some of that frustration came from, and some of those comments after Game 2 where he's just like, man, it's not going to look pretty every single time. We're going to lose sometimes on this road to a championship that everyone, has them placed in at least an appearance in the NBA Finals. But my point is, like, I feel like with Tatum, he gets judged on a different scale compared to like the other All-Stars across the Eastern Conference.
No, I don't really think so.
No?
I mean, look at what happened with Joel Embiid last series. I mean, if you're among the best players on the planet, you are going to be judged at a pretty high level. So right. I think that, Jayson Tatum has not particularly played great in the playoffs. Now, it hasn't really mattered because the Celtics have sort of been in regular season mode
right.
because they're not playing teams of the same caliber as these other teams. And like you look at like the Dallas OKC series or the Minnesota Denver series, those teams are just at a higher level than Cleveland and Miami have been.
Right.
Even the Knicks played the Sixers in the first round. They're clearly at a higher level than the Cavs and the Heat were. So, I mean, Tatum's got to play better for the Celtics to get where they want to go. He hasn't played great. There's not a lot else to say about the playoffs so far for the Celtics other than why is it Jayson Tatum playing better?
Yeah.
So people are talking about it.
But that's the thing, though, Bontemps. I feel like, okay, after Game 2, I get it. But the Celtics at the time were 4-1 throughout the playoffs. They had that one slip-up against the Miami Heat, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, why isn't Tatum going off every single night?
It's a competition.
I feel like
the competition
that's what it
has
is.
been great.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's true, but I just think when the Celtics are winning and when things are going well, Tatum is still going to get that criticism about his shooting.
I think Jayson Tatum gets plenty of praise. I think when Jayson Tatum plays well, he gets a lot of praise.
Yeah.
I don't think anything has been unwarranted. I just think, what else is there really to say? He has not played very well by his standards, and so people are talking about it.
Why do you think that
what
is?
Else is there to say?
Why do you think he's struggling right now?
I don't know. I mean, there's been what? I guess it's been 8 games. He hasn't shot the ball great in 8 games. Like, I just don't think there's a lot to say about it really in general. Like, I think there was probably too much said in favor of how great he played last night, because I thought he was probably their third or fourth best player last night.
Yeah.
Probably third behind Drew and Jalen. But like the playoffs haven't really started yet. It's kind of a weird situation, and that's where you look at Game 2 against Miami and Game 2 against Cleveland. The Celtics' biggest issue throughout the past few years in the playoffs has been they've made life harder on themselves than required, right? And so the Miami series, like, that was one of the best, literally one of the greatest jump shooting performances the team has ever had by the Heat. So I didn't really think much about that game. It was kind of like, yeah, the Celtics could have played better. The Heat had arguably one of the literally 2 or 3 best jump shooting performances in the history of the sport. They're probably not going to do that again, and they didn't. But Game 2 against Cleveland, like, the Celtics didn't play with a lot of intensity in Game 1. They didn't play with any intensity in Game 2. They drop a home game they shouldn't have. Now they come back on the road and play great, like they have repeatedly throughout the playoffs the last 3 years. But let's see if they can do another strong performance in Game 4 and another strong performance in Game 5 and close the series out like they should in 5 games. Or do they have this go to a 6th game? Do they let Cleveland get another game? Do they open up the possibility for somebody to get banged up, for Al Horford to have to play more minutes for another game? Like that. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk about Jayson Tatum because he's the best player on the team, but that's more what I'm interested in with the Celtics is, can they take care of business and move this thing along? Because that's going to have a much bigger bearing, I think, on where they ultimately go, as opposed to whether he starts hitting shots in the next couple games from now.
The most interesting moment of the series for me, obviously, after Game 2, the bad loss, bad Tatum game. He comes out and says a lot of the stuff we hear from him all the time, you know, big one being we're not supposed to win every game. We're not supposed to win by 25 every night. People think that, but that's not how it's going to be. Then he took it a step further, and this was a day after the MVP voting came out, and said, well, we don't have the MVP, we don't have the coach of the year, so I guess we're not a super team. We've talked about those comments at length, but I'm interested, you know, from you. Obviously, you talk to a lot of the voters, you do the straw poll. Why do you think it is he fell to 6th this year, in spite of being, you know, the best player on the best team, if that's how some people look at the award?
Who should he have finished ahead of?
I would go ahead of Giannis this year, just given all the dysfunction in Milwaukee. I know
you could argue that. Giannis also was the first player ever to average 30 points a game on over 60% shooting.
Right, so that's why I'm at, like,
you know what I mean? That's the thing. Like,
is it the stats? Is that what it is?
I think it's a combination of the stats and the overall impact. Like, Jayson Tatum is not Nikola Jokic. He's not Luka Doncic. He's not Giannis. I think if you look at what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did for a Thunder team that was the youngest team ever to have as many wins as they had, to have the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, like, he had a phenomenal season. And then look at the Knicks. Like, look at the season Jalen Brunson had. Like, if you want to say Jayson Tatum is a better player than Jalen Brunson, you're probably not going to get a lot of argument about that in a vacuum, right? He's much bigger. He's a better two-way player. Obviously, he's a fantastic player. I voted for Jalen Brunson 5th on my ballot. I didn't have Jayson Tatum on it. It's pretty hard to argue which of those guys has been more valuable to their team this year. And that's not a disrespect to Jayson Tatum. The Celtics have an awesome team. He doesn't have to do as much. You watch these playoff games, like, you guys see it. You watch all these games. Like, Jalen Brunson has to do everything for the Knicks, right? They have all these injuries. He's got an insane usage. He's scoring 35 a game. Like, he carried that team to the 2nd seed in the East. So, like, yeah, like, I say this about the straw poll all the time because people, as you guys know, really care about awards. That's why I do the straw poll. Yeah. And it's like, it's not a shame to finish 6th.
Right.
It's not a shame to finish 4th. Like, it's not it's not a shame for Shai to finish 2nd to Jokic, or Luka to finish 3rd to Shai and Jokic, or Giannis to finish 4th behind those 3 guys, or, you know, even Donovan Mitchell. I saw him earlier in the year, and he was having, this was in the middle when he was going crazy, and he was around the same spot as Tatum, and he was kind of frustrated. I was like, look, man, like, look at the guys in front of you. Like, this isn't nobody's holding past performance against you. Nobody's holding anything against you. It's just like, this is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, to win MVP, you got to have an incredible year. So, I thought the way Jason and Jalen handled Game 2 afterward sort of, like, is reflective of their personalities. Tatum is always going to sort of take a step back and take a bigger picture view of things. And Jalen is going to be more direct and emotional and in the moment about it, right? Yeah. And that's just sort of the way it is. And I thought it was kind of silly to be like, well, we're not a super team. We can't expect to win every game. Like, you could not repeatedly blow games at home in the playoffs, which he gave a good answer about last night when I asked him about it. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess that was going to be my next question. Like, were you surprised to hear him say that, like, to bring that up?
Not really.
In that moment?
No, not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, it's not the first time something like that has come up. And look, I'm sure he was annoyed he finished sixth. Like, he's a competitive guy. He wants to win all these awards. Like, I get it, But it's like everything else. If you're going to take somebody out, you got to put somebody in. And if you want to say, all right, like, Giannis shouldn't be on there, he should finish fifth. Like, it's hard for me to argue he should finish ahead of the other four guys. Like, he just doesn't have to. He doesn't need to be more than those guys on their team because they have the deepest team in the league.
Yeah.
Would you have Tatum, Josue?
Six.
Six?
To be honest, yeah, six. And a big reason for that is because of the roster. I mean, Kristaps Porzingis, like the third, like he's the best, or one of it. I guess you can put an argument up there, but in the Eastern Conference, he's the best third option on the team. Like, that's incredible for him to have.
Third option.
Oh, and sometimes it's Derek. Sometimes exactly. It's
like
interchangeable.
Their team is loaded. Like, and Tatum's numbers, to his credit, came down this year because he wasn't really forcing shots. He wasn't trying to score 35 a game because he didn't have to.
He didn't have to.
And their team is awesome. But, again, you look at the stats across the board, the stats aren't at the same level. And you just look at the impact on winning. Like, yes, their team had the best season, but because they're so deep, like, it's the same reason Missoula didn't win Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Like, he was on my ballot, but you look at what Mark Daigneault did with the Thunder, with a super young team, being very versatile, getting them to the number one seed in the Western Conference, which is much deeper than the East right now with all the injuries that are in the East, right?
Too, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, that's all. Like, it's not a personal affront to Jayson Tatum that he didn't finish higher than sixth. It just is what it is.
I just think the new generation of all these superstars, man, like this is what we're seeing right now. Like it's just a lot of guys finding their stride throughout their careers, and Tatum's mixed in there.
Talent.
Yeah, Tatum's mixed in there, but there's other guys as well. Yeah,
you go back through the history of the league, and you can every year you can say, like I say this all the time, there were at least 3 or 4 or 5 guys this year who deserved to win MVP. Like Jalen Brunson deserved to win MVP, but he shouldn't have won MVP.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, because he wasn't at the same level as Jokic or even those other guys. But like, if a Knicks fan says to me, well, Jalen deserved to win MVP, I can't argue with that. Like, he's been unbelievable and he's carried that team. But like, only one person can win.
Right.
So, there's always going to be a few guys that are deserving.
Yeah, Shea had his own unique case too with the young team.
Yeah, sure. He had an incredible year. Luka averaged 35, 9-9, and they went 16-2 down the stretch and got out of the play-in and got he's great. Like, all these guys are they're all deserving, but in the end, you got to pick somebody.
Right.
So they're just inevitably people are going to be disappointed. And, whether it's been the last few years with Embiid, I've certainly gone through this with the Embiid and Jokic stuff over the past several years. It's all the same stuff. Like, both of those guys deserve to win multiple times. And at the end of the day, only one person can win. So that's why I do the straw poll, because people care about the winner. But it's not anybody saying, oh, man, I'm going to personally push down Jayson Tatum as some sort of a vendetta. Just is what it is.
Want to get into the field that's building up too as the Celtics try to pursue a championship here. Just 4 teams left in the East. Some interesting things happening out west as well. Of course, we're brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Get a 100% deposit match up to $100 when you use our code CLNS over there. And check out the Game Time ticket app. Great ticket deals right up until and even after tip-off. When you head over there, get a $20 discount on your first purchase over there when you head to the game. I like that. Right?
Yeah, right. Some of these shows.
If you're here in Cleveland, if you're heading back to Boston, Game 5, great deals over there. And again, you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So I don't know how much resistance you see the Cavs putting up for the rest of the series. If it's like that Heat series, they'll have their one-off night, and then the rest of the series ends up going Boston's way. I think this will probably be a little bit more competitive game to game, just because Mitchell's going crazy.
We already saw that in Game 3, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was a pretty competitive game. And the Celtics, I thought, played hard and well, and the Cavs hung around. Like, the question for me going forward in the series is, does Cleveland do something with its starting lineup to juice up its offense?
Are they capable of playing toe-to-toe with the Celtics the rest of the way with what they had? Because I don't think Allen's going to be back, probably.
I mean, I think if you look at Game 3, I thought the Celtics were pretty focused and competitive throughout the game, and it wasn't a blowout. Like, Cleveland hung around.
Right.
And I wouldn't expect tomorrow to be a lot different. Now, if Boston plays to its level, it should win the next 2 games. But you saw last night. Like they held the Cavs held them to 106. Like that's a reasonable. Like the Cavs can win a game if the Celtics scoring 106. They're scoring 120, like in Game 1. They're probably not winning, right? So that to me, the swing thing in the series could potentially be if they're going to get another game or more, is can they juice up their offense? And to me, that goes to their starting lineup, and do they do something with Isaac Okoro, who's minus 38 in 45 minutes in the 2 games they lost in the series. And he was awesome in Game 2. It was a big part of why they turned the game around, because they were just way more competitive than Boston, and they won that. Like, they deserved to win that game the way they did. But you look at Game 3, Al Horford had no legs. He was gassed, playing 40 minutes, but no Porzingis. Joe Mazzulla always defaults towards shooting, so he's only going to play Luke Kornet so many minutes. And then, so first competitive game since Porzingis is out, Al's minutes shoot up. He clearly didn't have his legs. And they start the game with him on Isaac Okoro, and he sort of gets a break, right? And so with Dean Wade back in Game 3, a guy that the Celtics have to guard, have to pay attention to, he's plus 12 and 17 minutes off the bench. Do they consider starting someone like him? Do they start someone like George Niang, someone that the Celtics have to guard and make Horford work that much more and maybe juice their offense up a little bit? Because last night, Donovan Mitchell's incredible. The rest of the Cavs are 5 for 24 from 3. Like, they're not going to be able to win if they can't get more shooting from those guys. And you look at Game 1, Mitchell scores 33, the rest of the team scores 62. You look at last night, Mitchell scores 33, the rest of the team scores 60. They're not going to be able to win if that's the case.
Yeah, we sprinkled in that Horford thing, Josue, last night, but we do have to get into that a little bit. The every other day nature of the series and no Porzingis, that's something to watch. Because his stats aren't great when he's on that every other day kind of schedule. And now he's playing, as Tim said, 40 minutes every day.
It's not even the minutes. It's the cumulative effect, or it's not the stats. It's the cumulative effect on his legs, right? Because like like you said, with every other day, and if it goes right into the next round, like we'll see when Porzingis is able to come back. But the cumulative wear on a guy who's approaching his 38th to 39th birthday, like that's a lot. And you could see it in that game last night. He had no lift on his 3, and the Cavs were attacking him relentlessly on defense and going right by him, which usually isn't the case with Al. But throughout the season, he was averaging 27 minutes a game. The last 3 games before this one, he was playing 25, 26 minutes a game because they were all blowouts.
Right.
This game, it's competitive, it's close, so Joe naturally pushes it as far as he can, and so he plays 40, and he was tired. And so that, I think, is something to monitor. And again, that's where if I'm the Cavs, I got to look at this and say, I don't think they're going to be able to win a defensive series with Boston because they have more offensive weapons. So they've got to find a way to get some more points, and that's where I look at the Okoro piece. And do they try to juice up their offense, and whether it's go with Karis LeVert or go with Dean Wade, who I would go with because he's bigger and a better shooter, like do something to get more offense out there and try to get to 110 or 115, because if they do that, especially if the Celtics miss some shots, maybe they can win Game 4, and then the series is a lot more interesting.
Yeah, because if you're Coach Bickerstaff, that's something you have to think about exploring, because at the end of the day, like when you're able to wear Al Horford that thin, especially off the switches when he has to go out there and defend Donovan Mitchell, and you think about what happened in Game 2, like a lot of those points, especially in the first half, that really kept them in it. Donovan Mitchell hadn't even gotten started yet until the second half, but a lot of those points came from in the paint. Lack of resistance in the paint, no Kristaps, wearing Al Horford thin, and the deeper we get into the series, he's not going to get that extra help. I mean, that extra rest that he used to get throughout the season.
They don't have a lot of great, to your point, Josue, obviously Luke Kornet is huge, and when he's out there, they've got a decent rim presence. But Al, at this point, is an okay rim protector, but not what he was a couple of years ago.
Right.
And nobody else is really providing that. So that is a bit of a soft point for Boston right now. And again, it's the cumulative effect of the minutes, and that's where it comes back to the Celtics needing to have discipline and focus and getting the series over with, because every extra game you play, as we've seen in prior playoff runs from them, right? When you force yourself to play extra games, you put yourself in a position where you can have more freak injuries, you have more wear and tear, you just have fatigue as the playoffs go along, and you make your life difficult on yourself. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you. So let's see over the next 72 hours, can this team have some more discipline than it's maybe had in the past and take care of business? They win this series in 5 games. It's probably right about where it should have been anyway, and you feel pretty good about where they're at. If they let one of these games get away after coughing up Game 2, especially if they do it in a similar manner and they just sort of turn off and lose, it's a sign that maybe they haven't improved in some of the ways you'd like to have seen.
That's the last topic I was going to bring up to you here is the path that they're on here, because you talk about the cumulative effect of long series, and the Knicks are showing that more than anyone right now. They kind of looked like a slam dunk to win that series, and we're going to have this awesome Boston, New York thing. Now they just have nobody left.
Yeah. We'll see what happens this afternoon. I mean, if you look at Game 3 of the Pacers series,
They coughed that thing up.
well, look, right.
They're going to run out of guys,
The Knicks didn't play well. I think the Pacers played very well at home, and they only won the game on an Andrew Nembhard prayer, right?
Yeah.
And like the Knicks really shouldn't have been in the game. Like Jalen was in and out, didn't play up to the normal level, missed some really easy bunnies late. Dante DiVincenzo was great. The rest of the team wasn't very good. And you're right, like they're tired. They're missing OG Anunoby. They're missing Mitchell Robinson. They're missing Julius Randle. They're missing Boyan Bogdanovic. They're down a bunch of guys. But we saw in the first round, the Pacers are not exactly a team you can really trust right now. And while Tyrese Halliburton's been way better the last couple of games, it's been super good to see. Let's see how this Game 4 goes today. Well, look, the Celtics, you look at what's going on out west. Look at these absolute wars that are happening. Like Boston should have a fairly comfortable run to the finals. Like they should take care of the series in 5. And they should probably take care of the Knicks in 5 or 6, especially because of all the injuries the Knicks have. If the Knicks were fully healthy and operational, I think they could give Boston a lot of trouble because they're so big. They can attack them on the glass.
Especially Randall Robinson. Yeah.
Yes, like we've seen Boston struggle at times attacking the glass, right? And that could. And it look, I'm not going to put anything past the Knicks the way these playoffs have gone. Like they are crazy. The home court there will be something.
That series will be so fun.
It will be a lot of fun. So we'll see what happens today. But yeah, look, it's sitting there for the Celtics. They're the best team in the league this year. They are going to be heavy favorites in each of these series, especially, again, if they get the Knicks because of all the injuries the Knicks have had. That's not the same Knicks team it would have been. You know, look, maybe OG Anunoby's back, and if he comes back for the conference finals, it'll look a lot different. And maybe Kristaps Porzingis isn't able to play.
It's a big thing to watch.
Which is a huge thing to watch, and we'll see where he's at. That would obviously be a very significant swing piece, right? But you know, there's not – you look at the 4 teams in the West right now, I would say they're all better than everybody but Boston in the East as of right now because of all the injuries the Knicks have. So if you're the Celtics, it's time to take care of business. And if you could say they could go to the finals having played 15 games, like that's a significant advantage over what's going to be a couple of wars here in the final couple rounds of the West playoffs. And whoever gets there, their legs are a little sapped, and maybe Boston is in a position, in the opposite position of what the Celtics have been in the past, where they're the ones playing 7 6-game series every round, and they get to the finals, and then they're tired, and then they don't play well, and they lose. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But if you're a Celtics fan, you got to be looking at this and going, man, looks pretty good.
Golden opportunity.
Right now. Yeah, it's a golden opportunity to break through, to get to the finals with relatively fresh legs, and they'll have home court. Like, you know, it's sitting there for them. Like, let's see if they can. Again, it comes back to the focus and the discipline. Can they have the focus and discipline to take care of business? If they can, they're going to give themselves a real shot to do what they've been trying to do for a long time.
This is great. Love having Tim here. You got any last question for him, Josue?
No, man, that was perfect. That was good. Keeping it 100 here. I like it.
Tim Bontemps at ESPN. It's been a long time coming. Great to finally have you on here, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll have game coverage, Game 4, 7 o'clock. After the game, tune into the Garden Report as always. One last great shout out to our sponsor, PXG. Golf wear, leisure wear, polos, hats, tees. It's that time of year. Perfect time to get out on the course, or even just wear it out as the summer warms up here. He's Josue Pavon. He is Tim Bontemps. And this has been a live edition of the Garden Report from Cleveland. Talk to you soon.
Hey, Bowie Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS